Centurion Ministries is a nonprofit organization. We reinvestigate cases where we believe someone is completely innocent, had absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the crime, and nevertheless, under various sets of circumstances, has been convicted and sentenced to life or death.
August 27th, 1976, day after my 37th birthday, I was driving to my mother's house, and about 38 members of SWAT, SAC, law enforcement agencies crashed into my car, dragged me out of the car. Then when they got me in the police car, they put me on the back seat on the floor, and one individual was screaming and cursing. He put the shotgun behind the nape of my neck, and he pumped it. And I can't even describe what that feeling was like. It's like you just know this is it. If I only could know why. I think that's the only thing you can think of at the time. Why? What did I do in life that warrants this?
By the time the defendant is put in that defendant's chair in the courtroom, those who come together to judge him, certainly the prosecution, and in so many cases his own lawyer, and those interested parties, including the media, have a presumption of guilt. This could never be happening to an innocent person. There is an unconscious presumption of guilt.
If they don't have the means to make bail, they're brought out in chains, and they're in prison garb, and they're in a long line of others, and it presents a very intimidating appearance to a jury.
Even though innocence is the one thing that probably the average person would always agree, of course that would get you a new trial, the Supreme Court and certain Supreme Court justices have held the position that innocence in itself is not a constitutional issue.
Even if you can prove it, although the prosecutor is not immune from criminal liability, believe it or not, he is immune from civil liability. He has absolute immunity.
Eddie Baker has now been in prison for 24 years for a South Philadelphia murder he did not do. We went out and reinvestigated. We brought forward the only witness against him who, as the real murderer, admitted that he falsely incriminated Eddie at his trial over 20 years before, because this was his way to get out of a life sentence.
Donahue Wise more or less put the case on me. He took a deal for 3 to 12, did 3 years, got out. I understand now why he did what he did, because he would have got life and would have probably still be in jail.
The credibility of snitches is nothing. You go to people who are desperate, the most desperate people in our society, people in prison, and you say to them, if you can provide me with the following information, I will get you out of here.
In all those cases where somebody has been convicted of rape, sentenced to life, and years later freed and exonerated through DNA, they were convicted based on eyewitness testimony. The victim, who undoubtedly experienced a horrendous ordeal, nevertheless in court came in and said, that's the man, I'll never forget his face. We see that all the time. They were wrong.
It can be the very best testimony in the world, but it's notoriously problematical because of all the variables involved. How far away was the witness from the alleged perpetrator? How long did he look at the alleged perpetrator? Was it just a fleeting glance? What were the lighting conditions? Does he have good eyesight? You know, there's all types of problems, but you can't dismiss eyewitness testimony. It's very, very important.
It's totally unreliable. I have no belief in eyewitness testimony whatsoever. I think it's fairly farcical. Now, in a typical crime, what happens is someone barely witnessed it. They're afraid. Lots of times in the dark, they don't get to even talk about the ID until maybe an hour later. And now they're going through this book and they're trying to find the right person, and they got these images flowing in their brains, and they're pretty poor. And then they pick out the wrong person, and then they bring that person in for a lineup, and that's a farce, because now they just pick out the same person they picked out of the book. And then when they go to trial, they pick out the same person they picked at the lineup that they picked out of the book.
My mother received a call that they were looking for me in connection with the robbery, and she said that she was reading in the paper that they were looking for Joyce N. Brown of 3106 Burning Tree. That's where I lived, and that I had fled the state to avoid prosecution. And so I'm reading all of this, and I'm thinking somebody's crazy or somebody's lost their mind. I'll just go down and straighten it out. And so I called my attorney and went to his office, and we went down, and they put me under arrest.
Because the fact that the police can hold you for up to 48 hours without an attorney, that's when they've got to do all their work. Because they know as soon as I come along, as soon as the defense attorney comes along, my client's not going to say anything to him, is not going to cooperate. That's it. They're done. So they like to arrest people late in the day when it's a case where they really want to do some investigation on, and then they bring them in, and everybody's gone home, and now you're mine for the night. And tomorrow morning, the PDs will show up. And you even see it in these cases, how the pressure increases as the night goes on. And it's so typical that you're looking at the signature and it says 7:30 a.m.
At the police station, the atmosphere wasn't very nice. It was like about 200 police officers just glaring. They said, "You'll be in charge of the murder of Officer John Snow in New Jersey." And 1977, I went to trial. It was all basically circumstantial evidence. Killer was 5'8", curly hair, and no mustache. So I said, there's no way a jury's gonna find me guilty. Jury was out for 5 days. Come back, told the judge, Your Honor, we can't reach a verdict in this case. At which time he gave them what's commonly called in his country a dynamite charge. He told them, you realize how much time and money has been spent in this case. You realize you took an oath as a juror to come up with a verdict. Now I'd say this to you forcefully, go back in the room and reach a verdict, which is highly illegal. It's supposed to not be allowed today, but it's still being done. After 5 days, the jury went back in the room. 53 minutes later, they come back guilty.
We got Jimmy out in 1989 after spending 13 years for a murder he didn't do. The district attorney appealed the reversal of the conviction and his freedom. They tried to get him back in jail. It's taken 8 years for their appeal to exhaust itself. It did. They failed. So they're going to retry Jimmy again. 22 years after the murder, 8 years after he was freed. The two witnesses they're using against Jimmy Landano are the two real killers.
Nothing guarantees the conviction of an innocent person more than a lawyer that is underfunded, not up to the task, not competent to do the job.
Wealthy people don't get executed. I always said in the halls of justice, there is none.